His expertise on the topic of pioneering synthetic AI in credit scoring. So please welcome Mr. Azizjon Azimi. He's the CEO at zypl.ai, honored as a member of the Knight Hennessy Scholars Program at Stanford and featured in the Forbes 30 Under 30 list. So I'd like to invite Mr. Azizjon Azimi, to come onto the stage, please. Hi, you're here. I was looking everywhere for you. Thank you so much for joining us today. And please honor us talking about pioneering synthetic AI in credit scoring. I'm really interested about listening to this one.
Amazing. Won't disappoint you.
Why not?
Thank you so much, everybody. Hi, good morning. I'm feeling the energy coming down a little bit before the lunch, so I'll try to, pump up a little bit of the startup energy in the room. So guys, very excited to be here. My name is Azizjon, and I'm the CEO of Zippo.ai. And let me just grab the mic real quick. Thank you very much. Awesome. So the presentation will come up, right? Okay, perfect. Great. Let me start here real quick. So we are a startup born at Stanford University, where I did an MBA. We completed a startup garage over there, and we got started 2 years ago. So we're pretty young. 2 years ago, we were just a team of 3 machine learning engineers. Now we're a team of over 40 engineers. And we completed Google for Startups Accelerator last year, took the first place out of over 300 startups. And we also won a grant from Microsoft to do our model development and deployment on Azure. So what challenges do we solve as a startup? We start with identifying what is a concrete challenge that a financial institution is facing right now. For example, Credible, which is a fintech doing SME lending here in UAE, they're backed by ADQ. Credible is facing a problem that they want to start lending to SMEs, but they don't have historical data to build predictive models on. So what does Zipl do? Zipl creates a synthetic data set that looks real, but is actually a simulation based upon which Credible is able to lend to SMEs. Another case can be NPL. We have partners across Central Asia, across Middle East, where some banks might be having high NPL with retail loans, and they want to cut them down. So what would our algorithm do? It would conservatively apply decision rules in order to find the best credit-worthy clients. So the idea is, you build not the product first, but you identify the problem first, and then you work off of that. And in our case, what helped us a lot is that the world of scoring in general, right, credit decisioning, is moving towards AI. This was happening even before Zipl. In our case, if you look at the modeling, right, on the left side you see the real data from credit loans across the world. This is mostly developing markets. In the middle, that's what you see as a linear model prediction, which is what vast majority of banks use globally. On the right side, you see the most basic ML algorithm, random forest. And as you see, the most simple ML algorithm is significantly closer to reality than a linear model, right? And this analysis was done by Moody's. So in our case, right, machine learning, there's so much hype around it. Fundamentally, the code for machine learning is open source. This is some advanced math from the 1950s that's been around there for at least 70 years. And the only reason why we're seeing this massive hype around AI is because today you have compute resources, right? Today you have access to GPUs that enable you to train your models on large data. But fundamentally, the math has been there for decades. So, the issue with AI companies in general is that you don't have proprietary code. You're working on the same code that any bank can plug in to do predictive marketing, customer service with large language model like ChatGPT. All of that is fundamentally open sourced. So for us, the challenge was, how do you build something proprietary to have defensibility? To have defensibility against competition and to show to banks that there's actually something unique about our product. In our case, it was building this synthetic data generator, which essentially says the following. When a bank builds a credit scoring model, what does it do? It takes historical data, let's say for the last 5 years, can be retail, can be SME, and that data is plugged into a model that learns the patterns of the last 5 years, and that model is making a decision on the credit loans. What is the problem? The past does not always, come back in the future, right? The future is not repeating the past. And the more we live in the world of black swans, the more we realize this. Look at the last 3 years. We've had a global pandemic, we've had record inflation, and we've had a global geopolitical conflict happening in Eastern Europe that's impacting the entire world, right? So if you build a scoring model in 2019 and you're using it to issue loans in 2020, 21, 22, your model is completely irrelevant. Fundamentally, macro situation changed. So in our case, what do, right? When we build scoring models, we simulate what will be the performance of those historical loans if the macroeconomic conditions change. And that's the secret sauce, right? The idea is by adding macro variables, you make your model resilient to changes in the global economy. And that's why our company pretty much exists. And then once we have trained our synthetic data set, we do model deployment. The way this works is we can either give an API on Azure or we can deploy on-premise. So we can put our software on the servers of our partners. And we can also do what's called survival model, which is, if we approve a loan, when can a loan fall into a late payment, right? And then we do the prognosis for a monthly payment. Overall, our software is stacked. We have OCR. So, for example, right, if you take another case in UAE, one of our other partners is Al Hilal Bank, which is a digital-only bank in Abu Dhabi. Al Hilal Bank is doing essentially a bank statement analysis. So, they provide us bank statements of clients. We automate that, we put it into our model, and we say, okay, if a client had, X number of transactions, debit, credit, what will be his financial ability 6 months from now, 1 year from now, right? So we can do that kind of forecasting analysis. And an important thing is that all of our models are explainable, which is really important. This is the case about banking models, right, and AI. In banking, a lot of times, you don't use the most advanced model. Why? Because regulators mandate explainability. So if, the most advanced models are usually deep learning models, right? Neural networks, etc. But they are not very explainable. So regulators all across the world, they actually tell you, do not use neural networks because they're a black box, they're very hard to explain. So in our case, we go for what's called boosting algorithms, which are fairly explainable and they're fairly accurate. Let me just skip a few slides for the sake of time. And the idea is that in our company, we believe not in credit scoring, but rather in credit tailoring. Meaning, you should tailor as a financial institution an offer to your client. Credit scoring assumes that there is a client that is, almost about to beg the bank for a loan. I think that's fundamentally BS, right? Fundamentally, you as a financial institution in the global environment today, you should be going after the client. You should personalize your product offers. While most of the financial system is one size fits all. There's one retail product that is applied to, hundreds of thousands of customers, and that is not true. That shouldn't be the case, right? So that's why in our company, we try to say, okay, how do we build models that personalize the credit offer to the client's needs? So a lot of our work is around, predicting what's the right interest rate, predicting what's the right amount and duration of the loan, etc. And explainability, so you have these simple graphs that tell you this is the logic breakdown of the model, right? What are the variables pushing for approval versus variables pushing for rejection? And this is just one of the use cases, right? We have wildly different use cases. In Central Asia, there are microfinance companies using our scoring for offline lending. In Jordan, there are digital players using our scoring for digital lending. So, we have quite a big variety of partners. And the cool thing is, in environments where there is open banking, obviously we can use significantly more data, right? What kind of data? Things like user activity, right? What is when the client is filling out the loan application, if we catch that they're pasting answers, that's a fraud signal. That means that they're shopping. They're copy and pasting answers from different mobile apps for banks, and that's a problem. Then we also do web trace. So for example, if it's a small business in Dubai applying for a loan from Credible, one of our partners, we do check of Google reviews. What are the clients writing about this business? TripAdvisor reviews, sentiment analysis, right? So overall, in environments where we have access to open banking data, transactions, bank statements, etc., obviously our model is it performs better. And we have a pretty quick proof of concept. Within 4 weeks, we come back to the bank and say, here's a result, right? And a very important part about machine learning is that you have to do what's called out-of-sample validation. Meaning, if you train your model on one data set and you test it on the same data set, obviously you'll end up with strong results, right? If you really want to see, is my model working or not, take data that was not part of the training, leave it out on a completely different sample, and test that. Right? So, and that's what we do. Whenever we come to a bank, we say, here's 1 month, give us part of your data, anonymized, non-personal information, let us build a model, and take another sample that we haven't seen and run that. Right? So the idea is that this is what's called out-of-sample validation. One of our biggest partners is an American leading financial institution, FinCA. They're a big player in the microfinance space. We are across Central Asia, Middle East with them. And this is a full list of our partners, pretty varied list. We've issued, at this point, over $25 million with par 30 of less than 1%, which is much better than the traditional banks. We raised $1.7 million from global investors. The World Bank is our lead investor, along with an American hedge fund, Battery Road Digital, and Czech investor Presto Ventures. And the idea is that, with the application of AI, again, I'm very wary about the hype. So I try to stay away from, this amazing hype about AI will solve everything. I think AI will not solve everything. AI will solve things that people have binary choices in front of them. That's what AI is really good at. So approving or rejecting a loan, right? Or identifying, will the person have a default or not? These kinds of things, why is AI really good at? Because the math behind it is the best out there in minimizing loss. So in those things, absolutely, machine learning is already taken over the world, right? And in our case, a use case that we push forward to is financial inclusion. So if a client has no credit history, if they don't have an active transaction account, that's where machine learning will be pretty good at, because it will be able to use more data in order to personalize the offer for them. Thank you so much. I hope this wasn't boring before lunch, and I would love to take any questions. Any questions? Yes, please. Should I pass the mic? Or, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Azimi, for this presentation. Very clear, interesting. I was previously chief data officer in a big bank in Morocco, and it was a holding for about 17 subsidiaries. And one of the challenges we were facing is to create a credit scoring model for these 17 subsidiaries. And the big challenge we were facing is how to collect data, how to standardize data, and how to make it ingestible and usable by this algorithm.
Yes.
What kind of best practices or guidelines, if you are facing this kind of these clients, you can advise?
Fantastic.
90% of the work was really to collect and to standardize data.
Yes.
And 10% was the work of the data scientists to work on the algorithm and to find the best way to use and to have the insights.
Absolutely agreed with you, absolutely. I think one case that I can give you is, a lot of banks now are using their mobile applications to receive the loans. Right? So what happens? When a bank is using a mobile app, their credit scoring model uses the same variables that the bank collects offline in the branch. So for example, if you go to Mashreq or Emirates NBD branch, imagine that they're collecting 15 data points about you on your application for the loan. So if they go online, they will try to collect the same 15 variables. Why? Because they've been accustomed to it. That's what they've been collecting. But what we tell the banks is, if you have a mobile application, right, imagine you can collect tens and tens of more data just by seeing the user behavior, how he's performing during the application, right? You can collect mobile metadata. So to your point, there's so much that the banks can collect, but they don't often do it because it's hard to combine those data sources, right? So a best case I can tell you is from our experience, if you're online, don't just stick to the same variables as you would use offline. Try to get significantly more data, store it, and remember that, model development takes time. Like if I just collect, for example, that there's 100 people in this room, as an example, and we're collecting, their user behavior, mobile data, etc., I'm not going to be able to train a model until I know how did these people perform on their loan. So I need to wait until the loan actually comes to an end to then say, okay, people that spent less time on the mobile app, they are better at getting loans. So that's one real use case.
Thank you.
Thank you for the question. Any other questions? Awesome. Thank you so much, guys. Really appreciate it. Have a great rest of the day.